Hello, this is Coach Eric Anthony, and this conversation is going to be slightly different than the one we customarily have. Most of my conversations have been on how to inspire, motivate, and teach team effectiveness, on the value of working together, and on the process of including everybody in the quest for victory, because everybody has a God-given gift, and that only when you incorporate everybody's God-given gift in the process is success in its highest form obtainable for your team. This conversation is going to be about the role that God has had in the successes of my teams. You see, the reason why I am so convinced that faith in God has been such a big part of our formula, especially during championship seasons, is because neither of my teams were ever athletically superior to our opponents. It is my hope that after hearing this testimony, you too will be convinced that God was there and inspired to include God in your process. And now for the testimony. It was fall 2022 season, and my boys' team was coming off a 2021 championship win. Our energy was low because we just came off a break, and we had several new players on the team, which put a slight damper on the team cohesiveness that we had worked so hard to build the previous season. And I'm sure that all you coaches and athletes out there can understand how hard it is and difficult a task to rebuild team cohesion, especially when you have 3 practices before your first game. And as if the rebuild was not challenge enough, we also had a couple key players that weren't able to come back this season, and we had somebody out for an injury that ended up being out for the whole season. So games 1 through 5 came, and we got pummeled. Nothing we worked on or talked about during practice was working on game day. Now, it was still possible to have a decent seat in the championship, but for that to happen, we would have had to won all of our remaining games, and that did not seem likely. It was the day of Game 6, and as my squad was warming up on the field, I distinctly remember praying to God. I said, God, I have been teaching my team the value of faith, effort, and teamwork, and it is my fear that because my team has not seen the results of faith, that they will start to lose faith and the importance of faith in our process. And then I distinctly remember uttering these words. I said, Heavenly Father, please make it obvious to us that you're here today. As I uttered those words, the player that had been out due to injury decided to come to this game to show support to his teammates and came over and sat on our bench. Now, to make matters a little worse, not only had we been blown out our first 5 games, but our opponent today for Game 6 was one of those opponents that had destroyed us on the scoreboard 2 weeks prior. The whistle blew and the game began, and we proceeded to experience the most cohesive game we've ever had in our history. And after the final whistle blew, my team had pulled off an unlikely but very convincing victory. We then proceeded to win our next 5 games and the championship, beating every team that blew us out of the water and dominated us the first time. You see, what made Game 6 so special was not that it ended our losing streak and started our winning streak, nor that I prayed. What made Game 6 so worthy of testimony is that I had never before experienced such an immediate response to prayer. You see, until I share with you the pivotal part of the answer to the prayer, it would be easy to assume that my team's spontaneous victory and championship win to be the answer to the prayer. But you see, I knew God answered my prayer well before the end of Game 6, our remaining wins, and championship victory. You see, I knew that God was reminding us of His presence the second I finished my prayer and my injured player came to sit on the bench to support his team. What made his showing up to Game 6 so impactful and so pivotal to his testimony is that he had not been to any of our previous games nor any of our remaining games. And he showed up right after I asked God to show me and show us that He was here. This player's name was Emmanuel, which means God is with you. You see, the fact that my 2022 fall season boys team went from can't win a game to winning the championship would have been testimony enough. But the fact that He chose to remind us all of His presence through an injured player sitting on our bench made this a testimony I just had to share. This is Coach Eric Anthony, and it is my hope that this testimony encourages coaches and athletes to incorporate faith into their winning formula. May all the blessings that God has for you, your family, and your team find you in 2023.